In this recording, I'm going to explain the difference between fine-tuning or training an AI model and embedding data within an AI model or a large language model. Now, I'm making this video specifically for Emma beta users that are currently in the beta program because it's a question that we do get asked a lot, and the topic of training AI models is often misunderstood. So I wanted to clarify the topic to explain what exactly or what goes on behind the scenes, essentially, like for Emma, and whenever you're creating an assistant, and then how training a model works. Okay, so I have a visual representation here that I'm going to use to explain what I'm saying, right? And I also have an explanation here, or like a visual that explains like how training works. Okay. So first, I want to show I want to show a conversation that I've had here with an assistant. Okay. So on Emma, right, you can create assistants, and you can then connect them to your own data, so that your chatbot assistant can answer questions based on this data, right? If we look at this conversation, for example, you can see that I first asked it a general question. Okay, so I asked it, what is the capital city of France? And it answered, the capital city of France is Paris. Now, this is a very general question, and I don't have to provide any data for my assistant to be able to answer this because it's general knowledge, okay? And so the way, or when an assistant answers a question, okay, what is actually like answering the question is a large language model. In our case, we're using GPT 3.5 or GPT-4, which are the same models that power the ChatGPT chatbot. Okay, so if you've used ChatGPT before, you've essentially like interacted with GPT 3.5 or GPT-4, which are two large language models. They're called base models, right? And so whenever I'm asking this question here, so what is the capital city of France? The answer that I get will be the exact same than if I were to ask this on ChatGPT, right? So I'm going to get the exact same response. But then if I'm asking a question that is more specific, like what is included in the basic plan, it wouldn't be able to answer it without me providing the data. Okay, so if I ask this question without connecting any data, it will tell me that it doesn't really know like which basic plan you're referring to because it's such a general question. Okay, but as you can see in this case, it was able to answer the question, and it explained what the plan is, what some of the features are as well. Okay, and so that's because I connected some data here. So I can connect custom data, as you can see right here, or you can also connect data from integrations, right? So Google Sheets, Intercom, Shopify, Coda, Notion, and then we have more coming out soon. And so when I do that, right, so my assistant will be able to answer these questions, as you can see here, very specifically, right? And so the more data that I provide my assistants, the better it will be able to answer those questions. And I can also disconnect these connections at any time, okay? If I want to update my assistants. Now, so this is how like an assistant on Emma works, okay? But it's not like we're not training large language models. And this is what I wanted to explain in this video specifically, because it seems like everybody like asks us like, how long does the training take, or how much does it cost to train an AI model, right? And the answer to this is that we don't train any models. And so I will explain like how training works right here, because it is possible to train a model, but for a use case like this, it would be very ineffective, very expensive, and it would take a lot of time. Okay, so the way that training works with OpenAI, for example, right? So the two large language models that they offer, ChatGPT, GPT 3.5 and then GPT 4. And then, of course, they have other ones which are not specifically for Chat. But anyway, any large or any base model, right? So if you're going to train a model, what you're doing is that you're taking a base model, for example, GPT 3.5, and you would then train it based on data. Okay, and so there's different steps involved in like handling the training. First is that you need to embed your data. So you need to convert your data into a format essentially that the large language model will understand. Okay, it's called like vectorized data, right? That's what these large language models will understand. Now, this is good if you want to create an AI model that will be able to perform a very specific task. Let's say you want to create an AI model that can quickly categorize different emails that you are receiving into like 4 specific categories, for example. Okay. Now, this is a very specific task. Okay. So you get text, right? And you then want your AI model to be able to categorize it within 4 specific categories. In this case, training would be good because it's such a specific task, and like those base models are not trained to do this, okay? So what you would do is take the model, like format all of your data, and essentially train it with a lot of examples, right? So you would have some example emails, and then you would show it the desired output. So you would say category support or category sales, right? And the more you do this, and by the way, like you're gonna need a lot of data for this, right? If you want to do this successfully, you'd need millions of examples. However, you could do it already, with maybe like 10,000 different data examples, but to really do it properly, you would need millions of data files, right? And so once it's trained, which it costs quite a lot of money, so it's expensive to train it, and it also takes time, right? But so once it's trained, you will be able to use this model for like the specific purpose, okay? Now, let's say that you want to change this model, okay? So like, let's say like 2 of the categories that you've trained it on don't exist anymore, and you want to add 5 other ones. You're going to have to do everything again. So you cannot reuse this because it's not possible to remove data from a trained submodel, essentially, right? So because you've used a base model, you've trained it, and now you've created like a submodel or like a brand new model, essentially, right? And if you made a mistake or if something has changed in the data, then you're going to have to do everything again. You can add data. So like, let's say if you still have your 4 categories and you have 2 new ones, then you could just train it again, right? So that's possible. But if you want to completely change the data that it has been trained on, then you would have to redo the whole process, okay? So not very effective. Now, if you want to train it on a different model, right? So like, let's say you now want to use GPT-4, which is a base large language model. You have to do the same thing again, okay? So it's not like, once you have a submodel, you have it and you have to like redo the entire training again. So as you can see, it's not very useful, okay? Now with Emma, what Emma allows users to do is to create chatbot assistants connected to their own data, right? And it would be very ineffective for us to train models, for example, to like answer specific questions, because you as the user would need millions of like training data, and it would be very complicated to essentially like change an assistant, right? With this setup right here, you connect data and you can remove it at any time. Your assistant is updated right away. Okay, so if I want to remove like all of this information that it has access to, like, for example, the pricing information or information on features, all I have to do is remove it and it will not be able to answer those questions anymore, right? And so the way that this works is here's a visual explanation, right? So there is data, okay? So there's data which can come from integrations, or it can come from like your data folders. Like for example, here you can have data folders and upload spreadsheet data or just write your own content, right? So we have our data, and then we have the large language models. In our case, we're using GPT 3.5 and GPT 4, okay? And what we're doing with an assistant, okay, so for example, like let's say if you're creating an assistant, is that we connect the data, and by default, the assistant is connected to a large language model, okay? So now we have the large language model capabilities, and we also have the data, okay? And so whenever you're asking a question in this chat bot or over the API, or it doesn't matter like how you're asking it to your assistant, right? We're not training any large language model. We're just providing it extra data, okay? And so for a use case like this, it's the most effective way to do it because you can instantly update data access, and if you want to update your data, it will be your assistant will will have this updated data right away. Okay, and so that's really like how it works. So the Emma platform, essentially we connect all of these different resources, and then data is also like converted in like specific formats for machine learning models to be able to understand. And then we use this data and like within so whenever you'll get a reply from an assistant, essentially, we provide this data to the large language model to be able to answer it, okay? Awesome, so that's how Emma works, like behind the the interface essentially that users see, and also like an explanation on the difference between fine-tuning AI models and then embedding the data.